So can we talk a little bit about the fighting style on the ground in Europe? How did that play out? How did it differ from World War I? How well were the two sides prepared for what they encountered in that process?
Essentially, the fighting was completely different in World War II. We had developed more tools of mobility. Air power had come in. You could resupply people by air. Couldn't do that in World War I for the most part. It was rudimentarily tried. You had more mobile tanks already in being, where it was an experimental tool in World War I. We got into the trench warfare. If we'd had better tanks in World War I, but we're still playing with that new toy. How to make it work, nobody really knew. You would not have had the stalemate in there. So it was a mobile war all the way through. There wasn't the huge stagnation. Now on the Eastern Front you had stagnations, but because you were sieging cities like Leningrad, Stalingrad, those just took time to reduce or try to reduce. By the way, Leningrad, 1 million probably civilians died. And why? Starvation. And the stories of Leningrad, you talk about a people that underwent as civilians about as arduous a life as you can think of. Leningrad's probably got to be about it. And explains another factor of the fighting in Europe. On the Western Front, and I'm not saying both sides were pure, but it was more of a we'll follow the Geneva rules and we take prisoners and we do all that stuff. Yeah, certainly there were violations on both sides, but on the Eastern Front it became the Germans came through, and if they made one serious mistake, they made a number of them, but if they made one really serious mistake, it was not taking advantage of the populace. It wasn't all sold on Stalinism. They were happy to be taken out from underneath the rule of Stalin. And then what happens? The SS comes in and just enforces the most heinous murders, rapes, deprivations against the populace. And hey, these people become partisans. And hey, Stalin may be bad, but this new guy's even worse. And the horrors visited by the Germans upon the Russians were repaid in kind as the Russians moved back across the borders, both on the population and on the military forces. It was a much more violent war on the violence in terms of the lack of moral restraint, you might say, on the Eastern Front. But it was a different war than World War I, considerably different.